Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us for today's webinar, Supply Chain Resiliency Through an Effective Data Ecosystem. My name's Amy. I'm a part of the marketing team here at Perry Johnson Registrar's Food Safety, Inc., and I'll just be facilitating today's webinar and offering technical support to our presenters. We're very excited to be welcoming 3 guests from the industry for today's webinar, and they'll be introduced to you all a little bit later on in the presentation. Just before we get underway, there's a couple of housekeeping notes I need to take care of. To ensure audio quality, all participants are on mute. However, we do absolutely still want to take your questions. So please go ahead and type any points of clarification or curiosity you might have into the questions tab of the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll address as many of those as possible after the prepared slides. The top 2 questions we usually see are, will the slides be available and can I watch a recording? And the answer to both questions is yes. The slides from today's presentation will be available for download from the PJRFSI website, and a recording will also be available to review or share with those who couldn't attend via our YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube and search Perry Johnson Registrar's Food Safety, and it should be one of the first results to come up. So moving right along, I wanted to show you all really quick what the questions tab may look like on your computer. If it's not open, just click that little triangle on the left to expand the panel, type your question in and click send, and it'll come right into us for us to share with our guests. All right, to introduce our first speaker, I have Paul Demarin. He's our Senior Vice President of Food Safety and Supply Chain at PJRFSI. He joined us back in January this year. He has over 35 years of experience in the hospitality, service, and retail agri-food sectors. Before he came to us at PJRFSI, Paul worked for 15 years in the certification industry with clients in every sector, including food safety, supply chain, brand protection, quality, EHS, automotive, aerospace, medical, and information technology. Before he worked in the certification industry, Paul was a professional chef and a consultant for over 20 years, working in major hotel chains, restaurants, private golf courses, and food service organizations. So without further ado, I'll hand things over to Paul, and you can take it away when you're ready, Paul.
Great, thank you very much, Amy. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We really appreciate your time. We know how busy you all are, so we certainly welcome you and thank you for joining. As Amy mentioned, my name's Paul. I'm the SVP for our Food Safety, Supply Chain, and Cybersecurity Division. Today, I'm going to refer to us just simply as FSI. The full name can be a little bit long, but I'm very excited about today's session because we get to host another Executive Roundtable discussion on supply chain resiliency. This is definitely a very hot topic in today's world, and let's face it, companies all throughout the food chain are continually inundated with partial solutions that overpromise and underdeliver. There are a lot of rigid programs that are out there today that lack efficiency and flexibility, and we're all faced with supply chain disruptions, supply chain expectations, and regulatory compliance issues. So I'm very excited to welcome our speakers here in just a moment. So today, I'm just going to start with just 2 slides, a little bit of an overview of our organization. We're part of a family of companies, and Perry Johnson Registrars was founded by Perry L. Johnson himself in 1994. We've been at the forefront of certification and registration from the very beginning. As you can see, we've achieved multiple accreditations along the way, and shortly after our creation in 1995, PJR had received ANAB accreditation, and then continued and started expanding overseas in 1999. That started with Japan and Brazil. PJLA, which is our laboratory accreditation business, that was founded in 1999, and we continued to grow starting in the year 2000 to areas across Europe like Germany, Portugal, and Spain, and Latin America, Thailand, et cetera, to name a few. We also attained UCAS accreditation during that time, and when we did that, we continued to expand into China and Kingdom. In 2005, Perry Johnson and Associates, or PJNA, was founded, and that's our healthcare technology company that specializes in telemedicine, virtual scribing, medical coding, et cetera. In 2012 is when PJRFSI was born. And that was a result of demand in the industry for third-party certification to many food safety standards and schemes. We're headquartered in Troy, Michigan, truly a global company though, and part of a family of companies, as I mentioned, in the registration, testing, and certification areas. So currently right now, we offer certification and inspection to many standards. I think we have, at last count, about 30 different programs that we support. Everything from HACCP to GFSI, organic, gluten-free, cannabis, social responsibility, even several of the FDA audits as well. So, auditing and certification, we define our services into really 4 key areas. Auditing against a third-party accredited standards such as GFSI or GRMA, or the ISO set of standards would be another example. We have second-party auditing services, which are standards that we own and have developed and written those standards, like GMP or GDP, HACCP, standards like that. We do a lot of customer-specific auditing as well, where we'll work directly with clients who have developed their own audit criteria or protocol, and we'll conduct those audits for them around the world for many reasons. We also offer training for all of our standards that we support today. So right now, the third-party programs for PJRFSI, these are all standards that we audit to, and they're accredited under ISO 17065 for the food programs and 17021 for management system programs. We currently support and work in almost every sector in the industry today, everything from distribution and retail to production and processing, personal care, medical, automotive, aerospace, just to name a few. So today we apply the principles of quality management, collaboration, and organizational excellence in all of our audit and field activities. And these are the requirements that are set forth by the various international standards organizations and accreditation bodies. We have over 1,000 auditors in 60 countries who not only understand the regulations of those countries, but equally important, the culture. So at that point, I'm going to stop. That's all you're going to hear from me today about our organization. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to reach out to me directly. But now at this point, it brings immense pleasure for me to introduce our 4 key executives today, or excuse me, our 3 key executives from industry who are all very knowledgeable and are going to be sharing their time with us today. So I want to in advance thank Lisa, Greg, and Dave. I'm going to give them just a short introduction here, and then we're going to move forward. So I'd like to start with Lisa Palmer. Lisa's worked in corporate, nonprofit, and government environments, leading teams in data, artificial intelligence, business outcomes, professional services, C-suite technology research and advisory services, IT, marketing, sales, business development, project management, customer success, productivity elevation. There's not much that Lisa hasn't done. Consistently acting as a change agent, Lisa believes that technology should be ethically applied and drive, certainly directly drive balance sheet impact. And she works very hard and tirelessly to ensure that technology strategy is business strategy. Greg Sloyer joined Teradata in 2007, and he's had various positions. He's now the senior industry consultant. Most of his career prior to Teradata was spent in the chemical industry. He has a broad experience working with a number of different industries, from aerospace to retail, and across the various supply chain functions from demand planning to sourcing. His career ranged from IT through logistics to business operations, leadership, and consultant. And also prior to joining Teradata, Greg was the director of global supply chain operations in the agricultural product divisions of BASF. He holds an undergraduate degree in mathematics and computer and information sciences, a master's in statistics, and a PhD in operations research from the University of Delaware. So welcome, Greg. Now, Dave brings 25 years of experience across the retail and CPG industry and consulting space, driving strategic innovation, value, and ROI. He continually finds himself at the intersection of brand, consumer, and digital, which typically necessitates some level of digital transformation work. Currently, Dave is the consulting leader for the retail industry at Teradata, where he looks after 23 clients across the Americas. He's a big believer in client centricity. Dave is a student of building trust and long-term relationships with key stakeholders. And prior to joining Teradata, David held numerous roles at large enterprises such as IBM, Capgemini, Coca-Cola, and UPS. while also leading a small entrepreneurial mobile company for nearly 5 years. He graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point and earned his MBA from the Goizueta Business School and Emory University. So again, at this point, I want to thank everybody for your time today. I'm certainly very excited. And what I'd like to do now is just pass this off quickly to Lisa, if you could help give us just a quick overview of your organization.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Paul. I'm excited to be here. So I'll give you just a real quick introduction to Splunk. Splunk is the data to everything platform. And when we say we bring data to everything, we mean to every question, every decision, every action. The idea is that data isn't just something that's an asset that sits untapped, but that we really leverage data to answer the big questions, to drive opportunities, and to help us to overcome challenges in our environment. Hey, Paul, could you go ahead and advance the slides for me? Thanks, I appreciate it. So as we are evolving our platform to address what Splunk thinks of as the data age, this is a reality that in today's times, data is at the center of all organizations who are actively, competitively winning in the marketplace. And we do that through leveraging the power of our scalable index by focusing on streaming data that we can collect, analyze, and publish. And then, really getting great insights surfaced through quality search, through search that weaves together insights across massive data sets. And then, thinking about things at scale, we need to be able to orchestrate and automate at scale at the pace of that machines can move at versus a human speed. And we're doing this for over 18,000 customers. We have over 5,000 employees and 500 patents. And we service over nearly all of the Fortune 100. We're in some of the biggest organizations, and you can go ahead and move forward, Paul. This is a good example of just a few of the world's organizations who have chosen to trust their business with Splunk. So it's a real privilege to serve all of these organizations in addition to the enterprises, governments, et cetera. We actually have over 100 governments worldwide that we are helping to service as well. So it's an exciting time at Splunk because we are the data to everything company and it's the data age. So thanks for having me here, Paul.
That's great, Lisa. Thank you. Extremely impressive. So at this point, thank you very much. I'd now like to ask Greg from Teradata to tell us a little bit more about your company, Greg.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Paul. Companies rely on trusted answers to run their businesses. Analytics and the decisions and actions they drive have become part of the process. However, choosing and implementing the right analytic platform and process to address a wide range of these use cases can be really problematic. Teradata has been in the data management and analytics business for over 40 years, and we are known for delivering real-time, intelligent answers leveraging 100% of the relevant data, regardless of scale or volume of query. And we do it on the premise, in cloud, and anywhere in between. It's called pervasive data intelligence, and only Teradata has the industry-leading products, expertise, and services to help deliver that today. In modern business, data is everything. It shapes our decisions, guides our operations, helps us know our customers and give them better experiences. It's the key to unlocking unlimited value. But most organizations treat data as a commodity. It's siloed within business units, poorly managed, and inaccessible to those who need it, unsecured, unintegrated, and underutilized. To maximize the value of your data, you need to treat it as your greatest asset. Go to the next slide. The Teradata Advantage is a platform for pervasive data intelligence. In fact, it's the only data analytics software of its kind. It takes analytics beyond what other analytics platforms can do. Thank you for allowing us to give a brief overview. Paul, Amy, back to you.
Great, thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate that. Okay, so now we come to the exciting part of our roundtable today. This is where I'm going to start it off and ask our speakers a series of questions today that they're going to respond to. And at the end of that, we will open it up for a Q&A to the audience. So let's just kind of get started here. And if you don't mind, Lisa, I'd like to start with you here. So my first question would be, generally, how can data be used to inform real-time decision-making?
It's such an important question today, Paul. Real-time decision-making has become so critical as we have responded during this pandemic time. We've always been moving towards the desire for real-time decisioning, but I think everyone who has been responding from a supply chain perspective, particularly over the last 8 months, knows how challenging it can be when you don't have data that is immediately informing the decisions that you're making. So it's really important that we are designing not only our systems, but the integration of our systems and our people from a process perspective to allow us to surface real-time information to give to the individuals, ideally that are really on the front lines. We want to make sure that we are surfacing information that is current, that will allow those individuals that are making those front lines decisions or making managerial decisions about what needs to be done to keep our supply chains flowing. We need to make sure that we're focused on creating the interactivity between our systems and the humans that are so important in this process, so that the decisions that are being made are well-informed decisions. And that requires some really intelligent design of the systems that you're putting together, as well as a focus on the outcomes that are needed, both the immediate and long-term that you're trying to serve. So it's critical today that you are really putting thought into that systems design and the way that people are interfacing with your systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. Certainly very good information, Lisa, and I like the fact about, talking about present and future requirements as well. So Greg, over to you. Do you think enterprises today are taking advantage of their data assets to effectively manage or improve their supply chains?
So what we've found is that many companies have been focusing on the point solutions. And in doing that, you're really not leveraging the assets, the enterprise level assets, as you go through that. I'm sure many of the organizations listening and what we've experienced is their focus can be, for example, trying to improve the forecast. That tends to be the most prevalent that we're seeing during the times of the pandemic. And the typical question is, can I use ML to predict sales? Taking advantage of those advanced techniques. Some methods are going to do better than others, and building in various pandemic features, breakouts and features I'm using from an engineering and data modeling standpoint, breakouts, positive tests, openings, closings, things like that may provide improved predictions for the product sales. But given the limited history and as Lisa mentioned, the rapid changes, evaluating that additional accuracy that those methods bring, you really have to pair that versus what you're able to achieve in a rapid time frame, really to take advantage of those activities now. Beyond that, let's say you're able to take advantage or you're able to improve that forecasting process. Is the rest of the supply chain able to react to that improved forecast and take advantage of it? Are you linking it to inventory? Are you linking it to logistics and distribution? As you're looking at the data that's needed, is the error being impacted by the inability to supply against that forecast, which can confound the forecasting results? The decisions being made are very reactive right now during the pandemic, and versus trying to expand the existing and developing for those sustained capabilities, that we need to have, especially as we run supply chain operations, not just now, but going forward. You know, understanding flexibility, constraints, changing times and resources is critical at all times, not just during an event, you know, such as the pandemic. We had these issues in the past, you know, in terms of different areas of the supply chain being affected, like during Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, where it changed supply and logistics capabilities. You know, developing those resiliency metrics, measures, and features into your supply chain is critical. And, you know, building that supply chain data foundation and utilizing data to understand cause and effect relationships between supply and demand functions, continually updating the features that advanced analytics can use, and then going through the change management process to make sure you can enable that within your organizations is key.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for that, Greg. And that's quite interesting because, you know, David, if I come to you for a minute, Greg just talked about some of the issues with supply chain, and clearly supply chain disruptions can cause pain to individuals and companies. But from a marketing perspective, how do you think it affects marketers as they go about their day-to-day planning?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's a very good question, and certainly top of mind with a lot of marketers today. I would say, broadly speaking, you know, uncertainty that we see in the market today breeds quite a bit of indecision. For some marketers, it causes kind of that deer in the headlight moment, right, where they pause and potentially lose all momentum they might have had over their competition. But for others, and I think this is a much smaller universe, it creates a sense of urgency to innovate with product, with packaging, with new services. And I'll give you a great example. You know, during the month of May, right in the middle of peak COVID, PepsiCo launched 2 new e-com platform services, one on the Frito side of their business and one on their beverage side of their business. They likely didn't have all the kinks worked out when they launched this, but they launched it during a moment where few others were coming to the market with innovation. In fact, most companies were still trying to figure out how to get product through the supply chain to the store shelves. So as a result, the marketers at PepsiCo received a great deal of press, and rightfully so. They actually broke a plate of glass that COVID had placed on most companies' ability to pivot and change. So that's a real positive story. On the negative side, you know, the pandemic has created havoc with planning, and especially on the marketing side. Raw material shortages, commodity shortages, they've plagued product portfolios. Runs on inventory on store shelves has created huge out of stock issues. And this kind of uncertainty leaves marketers with sketchy knowledge for planning store promotions, for partnership tie-ups with either you know, musical entertainment stars or movies. And I would argue that those marketers who have relied on decisions from Excel spreadsheets versus robust analytic rigor are experiencing a lot more pain than others. But there is hope, right? I mean, the pandemic has opened the door for marketers to break new ground, to look at traditional models with a completely different lens. And that's why we're starting to see some really cool innovations hit the market just over the last several months.
Yeah, Dave, that's an interesting perspective to tie the pandemic into that. Actually, a little bit on that line, coming back to you, Lisa, you know, I've heard the term decision science has gained in popularity recently. What really does that term mean, and especially within our context?
I'm gonna take my cue from what Dave just shared there with regard to PepsiCo. So let's put decision science in context. So when we think about decision science, it's actually an extension of the data scientists, and it adds business context. It potentially adds design thinking, behavioral sciences behind it. And so if you take that PepsiCo example of their reaction with getting some new products into the market quickly, with getting a new e-commerce mechanism for delivery and interaction with consumers up and running quickly in the face of the pandemic. You know, you really think of that in the context of decision science. It can't be done just on the basis of data. It's got to be informed by those human elements, the behavioral elements, the context of the world that we're living within, and really applying some smart, bigger picture design thinking to that for them to come up with a solution that is best fit for that particular time in the market. So it's taking all of the best things of both the data elements of what we face, as well as the best things of what the human ability to problem solve brings to the table, and combining those in such a way that we create significant impact in the world.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much for that perspective, Lisa. Dave, the world, you know, really, as we all know, has changed with COVID, and many more consumers are shopping online, you know, and using mobile for groceries, to fashion, to do-it-yourself projects, me being one of them. You know, what are some of the big impacts to the shopper that you're seeing right now, and why do you think this is important?
Yeah, well, as a blanket statement, the pandemic has really accelerated digital transformation plans for most retailers and consumer product companies by 3 to 5 years minimum. It's just astronomically accelerated the pace from what they actually had planned in their, you know, strategic planning sessions. I've looked at a lot of investor reports over the past 6 to 8 months. And the common statistic I see, especially for retailers, is the massive jump in digital sales from roughly 11 to 12% of total sales to now 30 to 50% of sales.
Right.
And I don't think that's going to stay at these levels, right? But I can almost assuredly say that it won't return to pre-COVID levels. Now, when you look at the impact of the shopper, you see pain points in several areas of the shopping journey, such as product out of stocks, especially during the pandemic. And when there's out of stocks, you see inadequate product recommendation and substitution. You see much longer pickup and delivery windows. You know, when you contrast that to pre-COVID pickup times, you know, those were typically same day and sometimes within a 2 to 4 hour time frame of placing your order. But in early COVID, around end of March, April, even beginning of May, you know, the windows were crazy long, sometimes as much as a week. I know in Canada, where we work with several retailers, there were some grocery stores that were quoting 2-week pickup windows, right? So fortunately, things have smoothed out, and we're back to typical lead times for the most part. A positive impact to shoppers, I think, has been the contactless pickup and delivery services that you've seen pop up with a lot of different organizations. Many retailers, many high-end food service restaurants as well, have created these drive-up, drop-in your car services, which has been fantastic. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Right at the beginning of COVID, Waffle House, which is primarily based in the Southeast, they've got 1,000+ restaurants. But like all major restaurants, they shuttered most of their stores. In fact, almost all of their stores, and they didn't offer in dining. But the CEO, who I actually happen to know him, really sharp guy, he pivoted very quickly and started selling some of the food inventory to consumers right from each location. Right, this was a way to keep staff working, not to lose an incredible amount of product inventory from being thrown out. And so they were selling eggs by the case. They were selling waffle mix by the gallon. It was a really fast and successful pivot that he made. A second one is about a national sporting goods store. And this is this is kind of a personal story. With a bit more time on the weekends for me because of COVID, I started playing more golf with my sons. but I only had 1 or 2 pairs of golf shorts, you know, the nice ones. I got a lot of the ratty ones, but these are, you know, the nice ones, right? So I went online, I ordered a couple of extra pair. As I hit the submit button on the order, I was immediately sent a notification saying my shorts were ready for pickup within 2 hours at the nearest store to my house, which is about, you know, 5 miles away. So right before I left the home, I notified them that I'd be coming to the store in about 15 minutes, driving a certain type of car. And as I approached the front curb, right in the front of the store, an associate came out, verified my driver's license, dropped my shorts in the back open window of my car, and I was off. What a great customer experience.
Right.
And they figured this out in less than a month. This type of pivot, I can tell you from my experience, a lot of years in retail, is not easy. It requires a lot of data analysis and not only that, but procedural changes to staff duties. But they delivered a great customer journey in spite of dire odds. So there's thousands of examples like this where companies are experimenting with new models, so much so that I would say the old way of doing business will likely never be the same.
Yeah.
And you know, as I described in these very two simple examples, you know, the companies that provide unique and differentiated customer experiences are the ones that are going to win and rule the day.
That's great, Dave. Thank you very much for that. That was very enlightening and certainly true. Greg, as companies start to recover, what do you think they should be evaluating to understand the impact and changes that are needed in today's supply chain?
Thanks, Paul. Building off of what Dave said, you know, I think we all have experienced different kinds of examples of changes that the pandemic has created. My experience, if anybody's a cyclist out there, or just trying to get bikes right now, where you used to go into the major retailers and see, you know, a wall full of these, they are now pretty much empty. And that's true at a lot of the specialty shops as well. So with that, with the inability to get new bikes, you were also seeing a lot of service going on. Both of these are creating, you know, differences in the way those operations, from a retail standpoint, from a service standpoint, that those are operating. So from a supply chain perspective, you know, evaluating how you're doing that planning, you know, planning for service people versus retail side, because you can't get the inventory in a lot of cases, and how those markets are changing and your delivery capabilities are changing will be key. It's not enough to just store that data, but really look at those features, the cause and effects that can be used in the decision-making process, and have these be deployed quickly. And David gave you some examples of some of that quick deployment. Even if it's not, you know, 100% of the model right out of the gate, it's building that fast deployment and moving up that scale as quickly as possible. You know, when we look at evaluating cycle times, for example, because the lead times have gone from extreme, you know, different products now are easier to get than they were at the beginning. We all remember, you know, those various different kinds of products, but it's really how those cycle times spiked and how they're changing and getting faster now, but it's been a slow recovery in terms of that supply chain resiliency and the speed in which those decisions are being made. Keeping up with that and realizing that, you know, whatever models and analytics you're putting in place also have to keep up with those changes is going to be key. When we look at the retail side, you know, building off of what Dave said, it's really seeing how those channel changes and the purchasing behavior processes are changing, not just now in the short term, but what are going to be those longer term impacts. You know, when we talk about in-store versus BOPUS versus online, and how that changes your stocking and your replenishment decisions. You know, Dave didn't have to go into the store at all. So do I, you know, as a retailer, do I want to store things on the shelf for things that people aren't going to be looking at anymore? Could I keep that in the back? How do I separate and plan for that inventory? All those decisions come into play and how to make it efficient. Not only that, but we've been, in warehouses and distribution centers for years, and there's a series of statistics and metrics and ways to measure and improve efficiency in those. We now have to bring those to the retail side, because those retailers, in going off of Dave's example again, are almost doing those same kinds of activities. That sort of pick and pack process, you're having somebody bring out to the car, or if it was a distribution center, it'd be bringing out to a truck. It's all the same stuff that you want to measure to try and improve over time to get to that point where Dave shows up, they realize what his license plate is, they have his product, they can bring it out, and it's that improved experience for him, as well as efficiency for time and being able to go through multiple orders as quickly as possible. As we look at how these changes in the delivery and the ordering and the demand side are occurring, keeping up with those and measuring those and putting in place supply chain characteristics that have been in other areas of the supply chain now down further and closer to the customer will become incredibly important as we go forward.
Yeah, no, that's great, Greg. Thanks for that. Lisa, what role do you think augmented intelligence plays in the supply chain today?
It's really a great question. Augmented intelligence, and if you want to think of it as, there's actually several different terms that are being used for that for anyone in the audience that's not familiar with it. You might also think of it as machine augmented intelligence, or think of it as humans plus artificial intelligence equals augmented intelligence. And Gartner actually is predicting that decision support and AI augmentation are going to surpass all other types of AI initiatives and move into first place with regard to the value that's being created for businesses. So for those that really want to get creative about how they are, as I've mentioned earlier in the conversation, how they're really thinking about designing the machine and human interactivity, there's real potential from a opportunity to drive business value. So I'll give a couple of examples. If we think about in the retail space, you could increase shopper engagement and conversion by letting your online shoppers shop the way that they think, using machine cognition of their, the behaviors that they have demonstrated, and using that to create an opportunity for them to truly shop in the same way that they think. If we want to extend it to another example, perhaps within the manufacturing space, what if we were able to use augmented intelligence to accelerate the design process? So you would have a human worker input the parameters, and the machine would find countless ways of designing a way for you to reach that ultimate outcome. That allows you to create many more options in a much faster timeline than a human would be able to do that on their own. So these are ways that we just want to think about, how can we creatively leverage the power of AI, which, as we all know, is all based on data, and is the criticality of data is what enables us to be able to create artificial intelligence. And then let's think about the next layer of, how do we combine that with the human element to make sure that we're driving the best possible outcomes in concert with what the machines can bring to the table. So that the potential for augmented intelligence in today's times is immense, and it's certainly worth digging into and understanding more if you're someone that is in a position to be able to consider alternatives for how you are going to be continuing your response to the pandemic and looking to move into the future.
Thanks, Lisa. Greg, back to you now. Why do you consider supply risk or sourcing risk as a capability that really all supply chains should consider, both in not only the short term, but also the long term?
Great question there, Paul. As we look at, and we've talked a lot about the different effects of the pandemic, I see this as something that all suppliers, all folks that are operating in that supply chain perspective should understand or have that capability to understand sourcing risk and delivery risk as part of their daily supply chain activities. Really understanding sourcing risk and its implications on your ability to supply product or deliver product to your customers in normal times is necessary. And during the pandemic, especially early on, as ports were shutting down or countries would shut down for export, that's become even a greater focus, which is great, because my hope is as companies start driving towards getting that data, putting that intelligence around it, that it becomes a sustained solution. When I look at it, I break it down into visibility into that source and their delivery channel to you. Understanding, if it's trucks or rail or ports, and the global side of that and the implications, not just for the pandemic, but it could be for government and regulatory reasons or changes that occur. Those all have issues in that ability to deliver. When we look at the supplier material level, risk, and linking that to your inventory strategy and how that is going to be impacted by supply chain disruptions, aligning these risks and these indices with production schedules or demand plans, and then what those are in terms of contractual implications on your suppliers. If in January, as let's say you're setting up long-term supply contracts and doing the normal things in sourcing and procurement activities of volume leveraging and those types of activities, you plan on a certain amount. Well, most of the manufacturers, most of the supply was changed for 3, 4, even longer number of months. What's your exposure to your suppliers in terms of that financial contractual amount? Because you expected certain volumes and those just have not occurred. Being able to from the finance side to measure those kinds of things becomes critical. Like I said, it's raised in importance now because we're seeing bigger gaps in those numbers than we've seen in the past. The capabilities to link the source to the financial components to the delivery and your ability to sustain sales based on inventory positioning and the ability to get the supply delivered. These capabilities really highlight the need for an integrated environment and different types of analytics to support the decision makers throughout the supply chain. It's not just solving it in one little area, it's solving it across. Getting that global visibility of your suppliers with an understanding of the methods of the supply and distribution gives you that ability into their capability to deliver material for your needs. Building on top of risk indexes and ratings for suppliers and items, and looking at the value and capability, as well as making decisions around alternative sources, really, again, just brings in that additional nature of data and analytics to support those kinds of decisions throughout the process. Lastly, as we start tracing shortages and risk for materials through to finished goods, identifying the sales and the revenue risk exposure on not being able to deliver goods. Like I said, with my bike example, looking at new bike sales versus revenue on repairs, thankfully a lot of folks are still able to sustain, but it's really changing the nature of that supply based on the revenue components on what you're able to deliver and when.
That's great. Greg, thank you very much for that. That was an amazing answer. I really appreciate that. Lisa, last question I have for you is, could you give me an example or two of artificial intelligence that's currently being applied in a business-to-business supply chain scenario?
Absolutely, Paul. So I think it's really important for us to think about artificial intelligence as a mechanism for us to to do things more quickly, to do things more efficiently, to offload tasks that could be done by machines for us so that we can take those core personnel who are so critical in our businesses and have them doing higher level tasks, get them working on things that are really truly bigger value for our overall organization. So one of the ways that we can go about this is to think about the application of conversational artificial intelligence. So, historically, these were things like text bots and chat bots, and now, of course, we can do this through natural language processing. So we've got the opportunity today to leverage these, this higher end technology to offload some of these tasks. So if you were to think about the ability for suppliers to be able to check on an order, and they could do that through a text-based chat bot versus having to call in and speak directly to someone, or having to look it up in a system themselves. If they could just pop up a chat window and throw in their order number and have it tell them exactly where they're at in the process. So these are ways that we can use conversational AI to our benefit. You could also use tools like this using the natural language processing that would allow you to do similar things to enable your staff all across your supply chain to be able to use voice to ask questions and get answers quickly to enable them to be more efficient and to move more effectively in their roles. So there's lots of opportunities for us to use artificial intelligence. And then we want to think about what can we do with the data that we capture through these conversational AI applications. We want to capture that data and then leverage the high-end analytics, get into things like predictive and prescriptive use of those analytics to be able to then provide perhaps that information that is being requested most often. Let's provide that in a proactive way to elevate or improve our customer satisfaction numbers. So let's think about ways to capture the data and use the power of machine learning to surface patterns that we perhaps don't see as humans or don't have the time to look for ourselves. So there's not only the front end benefits of leveraging AI, but there are also those data-based benefits on the back end of it that allow us to truly be strategic in creating our next version of capabilities to provide customer satisfaction, to provide vendor to vendor elevated productivity and efficiencies, et cetera. So there's just boundless opportunities between leveraging AI and data.
Thanks, Lisa. Last question here now today for David before we get to the audience Q&A is, David, do you think today that we're going to start to see more or less retail and consumer product innovation as a result of COVID?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Definitely an increase in innovation. There's no doubt about that. I mentioned this in my first response. We're really starting to see some cool stuff hit the market. And this goes back to Lisa's comments that she made earlier around shopper engagement, shop the same way that you think, right? The piece about augmented intelligence, NLP, and the whole cognitive nature of predictive and prescriptive analytics. What's really interesting is there's a great mix of innovation, not just in the store, in the physical four walls of the store that's happening, but also now external to the store, outside in parking lots or adjacent areas to the storefront. I'm sure a high percentage of our audience listening today have experienced drive-up contactless pickup with groceries or some other food service hospitality service. And I'm sure many have used examples where scan, pay, and go technology is available. In the UK, Asda, which was previously owned by Walmart, they just spun them off about, actually a few weeks ago. They've rolled out scan, pay, and go to several hundred of their stores. And we're also seeing innovations around virtual queuing and a renewed focus, a resurgence of QR codes. Remember those a few years ago? Those were kind of the hot topic. Those are kind of making a comeback right now, especially for payment. And when you combine, QR payment with things like discount vouchers, loyalty points, and virtual storefronts, the QR code could actually play a huge role in driving traffic to stores in the future. Another really interesting idea is this concept of kitchen sharing, or ghost kitchens. I think a lot of people on the call today may have heard about this and heard about ex-Uber CEO Travis Kalanick, where he's been buying up lots and lots of real estate locations around the US to set up these shareable kitchens so that restaurants can rent out the space, prepare their food, and then deliver through platforms like Grubhub, DoorDash, and even Uber Eats. It's kind of been coined the WeWork for restaurant kitchens. Kind of interesting. And others have actually jumped into the fray as well, most notably Google, who's created a service called Kitchen United, right? So there's lots of innovation and new business models being developed as a result of COVID, which I think is just super interesting. And all of this provides new experiences for every one of us on this call, right? Who ultimately is the consumer and the shopper.
That's good. Thank you very much, David. Well, listen, I want to thank Lisa, Gregory, and David for their time today. That brings us to the Q&A from our audience. So at this point, I'm really looking forward to passing this back to Amy, who's going to moderate this section. And again, Lisa, Greg, Dave, thank you very much on behalf of PJRFSI, and I'll give it back to you, Amy.
Great, thanks so much, Paul, and thanks to Lisa, Greg, and Dave for all of that awesome information. It's really incredible how things have adapted to the pandemic. I mean, if we have to take whatever we can as far as blessings go from the pandemic, all the innovation and new perspectives on technology and consumer focus that's come out of it, that's really a great benefit. So get those questions in. As I mentioned before, anybody who might have been late in joining us, you can go ahead and type any questions or any, anything you want to share with our presenters, anything you want a clarification on, go ahead and type those into the questions tab and click send. I did want to mention really quick our upcoming webinars. We've got several on the calendar, and you can register for free for any of these at pjrfsi.com/webinars. And we've got usually about one per week through the end of the year. We're pretty busy. All right, so let's get started with some questions here. All right, we've got a question here from Tim, and I think this one would probably be best for Greg and or David. So Tim says, given the changes in shopper behavior, how are the changes in shopper behavior impacting supply chain? Do you see this as a short or long-term impact?
Thanks, Amy. Interesting question, Tim. I'll go back to David's example where he was, I believe, was picking up the golf shorts. That buy online, pick up at store. When I look at the retail side of the supply chain, as that continues to grow, and we talked a little bit about some of the characteristics, but really building off of that. It's not just that ability, because think about now the supply chain impacts of that action. You've got in-store folks, you've got online folks who are ordering, to pick up like David did. You're now competing, if that inventory is in the store, you're now competing for the same inventory. How do you promise one if somebody could be walking up to the shelf and pulling that off in between when David orders it and when they've guaranteed him to pick that up? So you get into a lot of the locking capabilities of inventory or positioning it differently to make sure that you can satisfy David as well as your in-store shopper. And then you start building on the other activities. So let's say David wanted, I'm going to keep picking on there, David, tan shorts, but the ones he wanted weren't there. Can they start, but now you want to offer, whether it's, cross-sell or upsell or alternative sell products, what do we have in stock that we can guarantee to David that we would then offer to him as part of that experience, so he just doesn't take the order which he couldn't get and go somewhere else. So building in those capabilities all integrated with the supply chain, because you don't want to offer something that's not in inventory that you can't deliver. So linking those back through the process and or giving David a time when I will get that inventory in place, all becomes part of that not just short-term but long-term actions to help support significant changes like that and the percentage of orders that come in that way as we go forward. David, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Just one thing, Greg, and Tim, is a very good question. And just for the record, I do have a pair of khaki tan shorts that I bought that day. So, but another area, just to build on Greg's point, that can be problematic with the supply chain, and we're actually seeing this in talking to many retailers right now, particularly during the pandemic, is returns. This idea of returns, right? So when you buy something and you don't like it and you want to return it, right? So what's interesting is, as online and mobile has grown exponentially over the last several months, so has returns, right? And what the impact is from actually a negative standpoint is profitability. So a lot of these retailers are trying to figure out what's the true impact, the true nature of e-com profitability by SKU, considering all of the costs, not only direct, but also the indirect costs. And it's a major growing pain point with retailers. And I actually think it doesn't stop just there from a P&L standpoint. The CFO, could be griping about it, but the marketer can be griping about it as well, because I think it also tarnishes the brand image and the overall experience of the shopper, right, of the journey. So the more this happens, the more negative scores, whether that's through reviews or other social posts, that slowly erode the brand trust between retailer and shopper, right? That ultimate brand promise that is so important. And having analytics in place to monitor and understand these changes is incredibly important. In fact, it's critical. And if you don't have them, you won't know how this is potentially seriously negatively impacting your brand and your business.
Great, thanks so much, Greg and David. That's a really great point. I know I'm guilty of the order it online, it arrives, try it on, oh, I have to return it now. All right, we've got a question here for Lisa. This one comes from Jeff. Jeff is wondering, what security risks should companies be cognizant of when it comes to using data to improve their supply chain?
Wow, that's a great question, and security is top of mind for everyone. So I think that it's really important that we make sure that we adhere to all of the well-trod expectations for security. It is easy to let down our guard in the zeal to get some of these solutions in place quickly. So it's important to make sure that we adhere to the governance that your organization has likely put a great deal of time and effort into, to make sure that you do have strong security guidelines and protocols in place. So make sure that you don't allow yourselves to sidestep what's going on from a security perspective. I've unfortunately seen that happen and seen dire circumstances result from it. So stick to your guidelines. If you need advice, definitely reach out and get advice from experts. But at the same time, you want to balance that with this idea that there's always a need to innovate and to continue to push forward. And security professionals are incredibly talented and can help you to solve these problems. So what I would really encourage you to do is to focus on the business outcome that you're hoping to create, and engage all of the smart people, both in your organization as well as those surrounding you from a partner community, in a brainstorming, a highly collaborative approach that says, here's what we're trying to achieve. Here's the mechanism that we are considering to get to that outcome. Now help us to understand how to craft a security approach that will keep us safe and resilient in today's times. So it's really important to make sure that you're being both prudent with your security as well as challenging yourselves from an innovation perspective, and doing so wrapped in the expertise and guidance of a holistic team that has the right perspective around the entire security protocol arena. So don't be afraid to go forward, but do so with caution.
That's a great perspective, Lisa. Thank you so much. I know we are getting to the end of our scheduled time, but if we can stick around for just a few more questions, keep them coming in. We're super happy to answer any questions. We've got one here from Allison. Greg, if you want to take this one, that would be great. Allison's looking for any advice, and in a similar vein to what Lisa was just asked, any advice for companies that handle sensitive information? Are there any recommended certifications or best practice training on the market that you would recommend?
I think, as Lisa mentioned, there's a number of different areas that will support, data security, information security. It's really, in a lot of cases, it's going to be very industry specific. Healthcare is going to be significantly different than government, military, things like that. So there's not going to be one answer. I think, as Lisa mentioned, talking with a security professional, they've got a lot of great advice on which security, and IP protection and things like that can be put in place given, the industry you're in and the types of products and customers that you're working with.
All right, thanks, Greg, so much. All right, looks like we have one more question sitting in line here. If anyone has any other questions, get those in. Otherwise, we'll wrap up after this. I'll send this one over to David. For a small business that has not integrated data analytics into its processes on an intensive scale, what first steps would you recommend? And this question's coming from Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. That's a great one. There are a lot of small businesses who may not have the wherewithal. In fact, I worked with one, right? I ran a small entrepreneurial mobile company for many years, and we did not have the financial wherewithal to purchase, a very high-end software system or data and analytics system. And so you're kind of left at the disposal of your creative mind to look at how to best drive benefit and outcomes as a result of even the smallest or young, immature level of analytics. And if you think about a maturity curve with respect to analytics, it really starts out from the descriptive standpoint and moves kind of up the curve to prescriptive and cognitive. But even down at the lower level of what I would call, younger, more immature, there's still a lot of blocking and tackling type analytics that can be performed and executed and operationalized within the environment of your company, and you can gain tremendous benefit from it, right? We work with a lot of companies, and these are large, kind of marquee, iconic brand companies that are still leveraging Excel spreadsheets for a lot of their basic analytics, all right? And so you absolutely should rely on those tools, but there's also, ways in which you can develop very simple algorithms, very simple analytics for your business at a fair price point. It's a matter of doing a little bit of due diligence in the industry and looking at perhaps some other companies that you may partner with that are doing similar types of work. So you don't have to have a big bank account to start on your path to developing analytic rigor within your enterprise. It absolutely can start at a more immature level and do the crawl, walk, run as you start to gain confidence and as you start to understand how better to apply more advanced analytics for the benefit of your firm.
Thanks so much, David. That was some great input. I haven't seen any other questions come in, so I think we're going to wrap things up for today. So let me just see if we have any last words of advice or input from our guests. So Lisa, any parting words for our audience today?
Thank you for hosting us. It's been a genuine pleasure to be here. I just want to leave everyone with this idea that it's important that we continue to push forward with regard to data capture and ensuring that you're going to be able to glean benefit from all that data that you're capturing by getting it visualized, getting it into a format that allows you to be able to make decisions, make real-time decisions, and leverage your technology to help you to create an organization that's more effective, that will allow you to even perhaps reduce the amount of staff that is required to do certain things so that you can move those staff into higher level functioning roles. And be open to innovation. We're living in the data age, and there's endless opportunities in front of us. So thanks for hosting us. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Lisa. Greg, any input from you?
Thanks, Amy, Paul, thank you for hosting this, and thanks to the colleagues on the panel here. Great time. I hope folks were able to glean something out of this from the discussion. Just building off a little bit of Dave's last question, don't underestimate the change management process that goes on, whether that's supply chain or, getting to advanced analytics. That to me is a key. There's building blocks to get there. And what we've found is if the foundation in, organizational and process and technology and capabilities, all those things aren't there in supporting that move to higher use, as David was saying, those more advanced techniques, it's much longer to implement. That's what I've seen and experienced. So I can just say, build that data foundation, look at that integrated approach, look at how you're using that data and what that data as an asset is really driving towards, and really build from there. And, getting that visibility, then getting into, as David said, prescriptive, descriptive techniques, things like that, and then moving up into the more advanced and automated components. Walking through that crawl, walk, run process and not skipping too many steps can often be a big difference in the success of the organization. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. David, any parting words?
No, I think Lisa and Greg summed it up very, very well. I just wanted to thank you, Amy and Paul, for the opportunity to participate on this panel. Thank you to my colleagues, Lisa and Greg, for sharing some terrific insights and great wisdom with the audience. And it was a lot of fun. So hopefully we can do this again at a later time. And just hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thanks, David. Paul, any last words from you?
Just again, on behalf of PJRFSI, Lisa, Greg, and Dave, thank you so much for your time. I know how precious it is, as well as everybody that joined us on the call. We really appreciate it. I think this was an excellent overview of data and supply chain resiliency. So I think the topic was great. It was timely, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again to all of our attendees and to everyone on our panel. I'm going to wrap things up for today. So thanks so much for taking the time to attend out of your busy schedules. And I'll just say stay safe and stay healthy out there, and we'll see you all on the next webinar. Have a great day.